Okay, another one that I think is a fake alien video. This is supposedly a security camera filming it. Now I know CGI. Don't ask me how I know, but I know. And straight away this is a CGI character. So it actually gets up and walks around. Now also no video. Don't ask me why. It's let's just say I know it from another life. Now it gets up and then it looks around the camera. Just happens that it knows where the camera is. That's the first thing it decides to do. And that line there where it changed, that is coming up to the camera, yeah, obviously it knows what a camera is, you know. So what the, oh god, it's so fake. But that line, when it goes, there we go. Now when that happens there, that is an artificial fake distortion. Now this would have been done on VHS tape or a tape source, which would have caused a different type of distortion. Here is an alien from Venus, apparently. Now in 1955 he managed to get in with Eisenhower, president, and help him liaise with him and talk to him about various different things. Now there's another picture here that someone says is also Valiant Thor, Thor. Now I think they're two different pictures and two different people. So I'm going to leave this one on the fence. Now when I go back round to restart all the subjects again, but I'll be doing different things on all the subjects again, so right back to the beginning of what I've been talking about. So for example, part 1 was the planet Nibiru, so I'll go back around, but I'll explain a lot more in depth about different things that you've not already heard me say. But don't forget, on my YouTube channel you can watch them in blocks of 50, so you don't have to keep scrolling up. So subscribe to me on YouTube, you can watch it, look, 101 to 150 videos in one go. I have to mention Dolores Cannon regarding alien communications, etc., because she was a hypnotist. I think she passed in 2014. She was a regressionist as well, which allowed people to go back in previous lives. So she could gain information about whether or not someone was the soul or was already belonging to another alien, you know. So in other words, your past life was an alien. So she's a great resource. You always have to be a bit careful. You know, I always say, unless I hear it sort of 2 or 3 times from different people, then I always put it on the back fence until I can sort of collaborate it. But she's a very good source, and there's other people out there that can do you know, past regressions. So if you are interested in finding out what your previous life was, do look out people like her. A real alien skull. Now I'm going to take a few videos to cover this. So this skull is called the Star Child skull, and it was named that by Lloyd Pye. Now Lloyd Pye was allowed to now he was a doctor, and he was allowed to examine this skull. Now this skull was originally found in 1930s by an American girl from El Paso in Texas in an abandoned mine near a copper canyon in Mexico. Now Lloyd Pye immediately saw that it was different to normal skulls. Now he did various tests on these, and the establishment didn't want him to do that. They ridiculed him every step of the way. He'd done many interviews and was trying to say that this is genuine, it's not a deformity. I'll carry on in the next video. Basically this alien skull, carrying on from the last video, had many differences, and of course the most important thing was the DNA, because obviously although the sutures and the shape of the head and everything else was different to a normal child's head, which was a child's age, they believe, because of the size of it, etc. There's so many other differences that don't match any kind of deformity known to man. So the mitochondrial DNA ended up being different. Now Lloyd Pye obviously you know, went about on radio shows and everything else trying to explain that this is genuinely a mystery, but again, he, like I said on the other video, he was debunked every step of the way. Now unfortunately he died, and the story then carried on with the people that owned the actual skull themselves. So this is a reconstruction of what the Star Child skull would look like if it had human skins and human features, etc., and the eyes are larger than normal. Now anyway, as I was saying in the last video, the skull was passed back to the owners after Lloyd Pye had passed, and they for a period carried on championing the cause to say that it's not a human skull, or certainly not 100% human. Anyway, one day one of the people that was in charge of the skull went on Coast to Coast and basically gave the Coast to Coast AM, which is a radio show that talks about paranormal, etc., and literally just turned around and said, we're wrong, the DNA is wrong, it's actually a human child with deformities, end of. Now I personally think that she was probably either fed up, didn't want to carry on like Lloyd Pye did, because obviously whatever happened to him she didn't want to happen. Okay, so to me this is proof that there is
However,
aliens.
there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve.
So basically this was back in the 50s, and they're saying that they can't figure out what the craft were that's flying around. Now, jump forward to recently when the Pentagon released the UFO report, they're saying it's either other countries with technological more advanced than the USA, or it's aliens. So you go back to the fact that this was done in the 50s. Now that means the other countries would have been technically advanced even then. Do you see where I'm going with this? So if they were technically advanced then, and 80 years later the Americans can't figure out that it's not the other country, because they're saying we don't know, but we're not ruling out aliens, so it could be another country. So you're telling me that in 80 years, all this flying stuff since when he first said it, they haven't figured out where it's coming from? Not one idea of where it's coming from on another country? Or do they actually know and it's really UFOs and they can't really say it? Do you see, it just defies belief that back then they're saying that there's this things that's doing incredible things is from another country. They're not saying that, but I'm saying if they said it was from another country, 8 years later they couldn't figure out where these things are still coming from. So there's a mismatch there. I've just got to say that TikTok has classed one of my videos as illegal activities and regulated goods, and they blocked it, and all it was doing was talking about Bigfoot DNA. So what I'm suggesting, people, please, is go subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can see the videos there. So far they're all good, no one's blocked them or banned them, and you can also watch them in one whole block there, you know, like 50 in a row. And there's some other content. I know I keep pushing the YouTube, but obviously the more TikTok keeps pulling down silly things, like, I mean, talking about DNA, and I'm getting told that it's illegal activities. You see, obviously this goes back to the, you know, if they've got nothing to hide, they wouldn't hide it. So I might be onto something with these videos. Well, I believe I am, but you know, when someone takes something down, it's not because they think I'm having a laugh, they think it's real. So that's why I strongly suggest go to my YouTube channel, just search Our True History. You can type parts if you need to find it. This woman here claims to be an alien hybrid. Now, I know I've said in other videos that the aliens take the hybrids to another planet, which they do, but I also said that they leave some here. Now, abductees that turn into contactees, which are basically abductees that eventually are happy to go with the aliens for whatever reason, whether they're benefiting for their health reasons, because aliens do actually help the health. I'll cover that in another video. But so some abductees or contactees that are allowed to have their memories. So contactees, some contactees actually are not suppressed, which means they don't need to have a hypnotist to regress them to remember stuff. So anyway, some contactees have said that they have been taken up to craft alien ships and asked to teach I know it sounds crazy, asked to teach these hybrids things, humour, jokes, linguistic type things, you know, where we would make a comment that is double meaning, double entre, if I even pronounce that right. So they've been asked to help these. Now, when these hybrids do come down to Earth and live here, they have those same people, humans, as their sort of handlers, so to speak. So they will go along and help them get a house, get a car, etc. Now, these hybrids can actually manipulate humans using mind control. So, for example, they could walk into a bank. I'm just using an example. Could walk into a bank and say to the bank teller, "Add an extra few noughts on my bank account," and that person would do it. So, whether this lady is or not, I don't know. Her name is Leah Capitelli. Now, there's many cases up here that saying why they're here on Earth. This one here is saying that they're here because they can survive our climate change and will take over the planet. But there's other stories as well. Just while I've got you, me and Something to Think About TV was thinking, would you be interested if we set up a sort of a conference or a live meet and greet type of thing where we get a couple of other people along to do some speeches, some notable people, obviously, people that's in the know. Would you be, just put a note in the comments, say yes or no. Would you be interested in coming along to one of these things? You'll meet me and Something to Think About, and obviously other guests. Who helped the Nazis move to the Antarctica? Well, I mentioned that it could have been the reptilians, but this guy here used to work for NASA. He's passed now, but he was around the same time that the people that came over on Operation Paperclip, which was an American operation to bring the smart people that was creating rockets, etc., in Nazi Germany, and bring them over to America to form NASA. So he actually knew some of these people. Anyway, the story goes that he says that an alien race, instead of the reptilians, an alien race called the Aryans, some of them had blue hair and blonde eyes, were the ones that helped the Nazis, which is why apparently Hitler liked the idea of blonde hair and blue eyes. So check out his people's done some books on his memoirs, but I don't know. Anyone remember this guy, Uri Geller? Now, what you may not know is his story starts when he was about 5 or 6. He was coming home from school in Israel, I believe he lived, and he was followed by this orb. This orb eventually caught up with him and knocked him over. After that, he had these abilities, so much so that the American CIA, I think it was, actually employed him for a various period of time, a few years. Now, they wouldn't have done that if he didn't actually have some sort of skills. Now, he attributes these skills to that orb that gave him, and he also talks about the fact that we can all consciously create something together, which is why he does these tricks. Well, I say tricks, how he can fix people's watches through the television, which I'll cover on another episode about manifestations, etc. So Uri Geller is actually a real psychic of sorts. Missing time. Missing time is when a UFO picks you up and your time there, so for example, if they're operating on you or doing something with you for 2 hours, for example, you're not missing the time as such because you are spending the time there, but when they drop you back, they get rid of your memory or implant a false memory into you. So technically it's not missing time. It's not like you jumped over 2 hours in a flash. It's you just basically can't remember those hours that you've been missing. Now, people have been abducted even lying next to their friend, or partner in bed. Their partner is frozen, doesn't wake up, doesn't even know you're gone, and then you're put back a couple of hours later, and then finally your partner wakes up and they don't know any different. So missing time, that's what it really means. Now I'm just gonna I have to mention this website here. I'll go on to more UFO in a sec. Now this website is called thegiftKingdom.co.uk, and it's phenomenal. Basically you can send a photograph, and they animate the face, they put it onto a story on a video. This one's a princess video. They do nursery rhymes, and they do a pirate video. So just basically a front-facing face, and they actually animate the face as well. But not just that. This is how I know of them. I've got a book here sent to me, and it's a comic book. So, as far as I'm aware, it's the world's first comic book that you're actually proper comic book you're actually starring in. So any age. Now the comic book, from what I've been told, the physical comic book is UK only. They can only post to the UK. But if you wanted. If you, as in another country, you can get the PDF version of it. So, and they do many more things. So basically, it's perfect for a birthday present or a gift or Christmas present or something like that. These are fantastic. I will be. I'm apparently being sent the video of the print. There you go. They animate and everything. So, okay, back to UFOs. So, you've probably heard. That cars stop when a UFO goes over them. Now, it's not the light beam that causes the engines to die. It's actually the distortion field that's around the craft. So when a UFO can fly close to a car, it kills the power, because there's this... Basically, just imagine there's nothingness around it, which is sort of anti-gravity. And it just basically kills the car. And the same thing happens when it flies near an aeroplane. An aeroplane can lose power, which is really dangerous, but it has done many cases of that. This is an ancient spacecraft, believe it or not. It is. It's called the Oumuamua, pronounced probably wrong. It's a Hawaiian name that was found because a telescope in Hawaii spotted it, and it's got an orbit that goes from outside our solar system and round our sun, and then speeds up after the sun. Now, if you talk to experts, someone for example from SETI, he says that the only way that it could have speeded up is if it had water on it, and as it went near the sun, obviously the water would burst out like jets and propel it. Now this doesn't have a tail, which means it is not got ice on it or water, which means it was propelled by something else. Now this is the trajectory it had. As you can see there, it came straight out of our solar system and went back to a different one, or went back to the same one, I'm not sure. I'll do more on this in the next video. According to whistleblowers, American military went on this spacecraft. This is a spacecraft. There was a computer animation of it, but they went on, using the TR-3Bs or similar spacecraft that they've got here on Earth, and they went up to this ancient spaceship. Now, apparently, they got inside, and it was emptied out, meaning other races have already been there and gutted it out. And apparently the trajectory it's been on means it's been flying through the solar systems for millions of years. So that's a simple way of looking at this. Now, it doesn't have a tail, as I mentioned before, which means it's not full of ice, so it's literally just a rock. And there's so many other things that make it a bit weird. So if you're interested in it, look out for the Oumuamua. And I know it's probably... A UFO actually causes an effect to happen when it lands on Earth. So when a UFO lands near trees, the trees either take a lot longer to grow thereafter, or they grow rapidly, but it's normally the other way around. It's normally they're grow a lot, and this is tested by the tree's rings and by the radiation that is produced in the area where the actual craft landed. So people go along with Geiger counters, etc. Now, outside of that radius, the trees are fine. Now, this happens all the time, so that has got to be some sort of proof that the craft has landed and that it actually has some properties that's sort of outside of our grasp, anti-gravity or whatever. Okay, so a Russian astronaut films UFOs. Have a watch of this.
I want to show you the video he posted. This happened when he was filming the Aurora Borealis. He was doing a time lapse. Just into the time lapse, there's a few objects that appear. We're going to freeze it for you so you can get a good look at it. 5 objects appear flying alongside each other with the same distance in between them.
Okay, so you now, as long as you take all the others into account, if I just showed you this on your own, you'd say ice crystals or something else. But when you add this to all the other ISS camera footage that they've shown, you've got to start thinking maybe these are alien craft. Now, this video was sponsored by FridgeDoorAlarm.com. You can get them from FridgeDoorAlarm.com or eBay. Look for that one. It's got timer delay and everything else. So if you leave your fridge door too long, it will beep and then it gradually gets louder. I'm just going to show you some more. There's a UFO there leaving Earth's atmosphere. And as you see, the Earth's got a slight curvature to it there. Ignore that because I will cover the firmament later on. I've made my mind up on what it is. But as you see, the crafts there, you see lots of different crafts coming and going from Earth. Obviously my video is showing a video of it, so it's not great quality, but the point is there are these things leaving and entering Earth's atmosphere, which can defy normal explanation. So I'm going to move on to other subjects other than UFOs. We'll come back to these when I come back round. So there you go, another one there for leaving. Nope, 2. See, so I mean the speed they're going is ridiculous. I mean, not to say that they're not American UFOs, back engineered craft, just saying there's another one there. So yeah, let me tell you a story about a portal, and then next video I'll explain what I think portals are. So there was this woman and her two young children went to the back of the estate in America, and it leads onto a forest, and they're out picking berries, etc. And one of the younger kids, about 5 years old, he was probably about 20 foot away from his parent, and he went missing just like that. Bang, vanished. She called out police, dogs, everything else. Obviously the kid was never found. 5 years later, the kid knocked at her back door. I'm guessing he was 5 years older, and she asked him, was a surprise, she asked him where he was. He said, "Mummy, I could see you, but you couldn't see me." So he was obviously, then she asked him, how did you survive? And he was with the little people, he said. So I will explain what that means in the next video. A portal can take you from one place to another, but I'm talking here about the vowel of a different, you can call it a different universe, call it whatever you want, but it's like the same page but 2 different sides. You can't see the other side because you're on one side, and that is happening right now. There is, right beside you is, you're out of phase, you can't see it, but things are happening beside you. It's kind of like ghosts. I'll cover that in a sec, but first I have to mention this is Black Ops, sponsored by Black Ops, Aliens, Bigfoot and Our Untold History. Excellent book. I've got a copy of it. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. I'll put a description in the link. So it's like ghosts. So ghosts, again, they're out of phase. We can't see them because they're on a slightly different frequency to us, and the same goes for this vowel. Now, certain times and certain conditions can allow someone to slip through that vowel. When I talk about the word vowel, I'm on about a thin layer between our reality and his reality. Yes, leprechauns are real, and let me tell you a quick story. A 7-year-old boy was fishing with his parents somewhere in America, I believe, and he came across the boy separated from his parents, only a short distance away, but he came across a little leprechaun smoking a pipe sitting by this river, and the leprechaun suddenly looked round and dropped his pipe and literally disappeared. The little boy picked up the pipe, obviously told his parents that he saw sort of a 1 foot little creature. Anyway, the parents didn't believe him, and the little boy took the pipe home, put it in his drawer. The next morning the pipe had gone. This is a real skeleton, actually genuine skeleton, and it is tiny little skeleton. Now, If you think it's been debunked, because you may have seen this before, let me just explain why they say it's debunked. Because it has some, not all, some human DNA. So then they say, well, there you go. Even though it's exhibits unusual appearance and everything else, it has human DNA. So therefore it's debunked. But anyone that's watched any of my other videos realizes that just because it's got human DNA, which literally everything has, bananas, fruit fly, rats, all got human DNA, and so is this little creature. So I'm saying this little creature, although I don't think it's an alien, I think it's from the other side, as I was talking about in the last video. The upside down, if you watch Stranger Things, whatever you want to call it, the Val of just basically the other side of what we can't see. So there's loads of these little creatures all over our history. So here's just some of the names here: dwarves, gnomes, pixies, leprechauns, even Smurfs is another name that's used in another country. The list goes on there. Look at that. That's a huge amount. So that's a huge amount of names for people just to make up rubbish, to lies, to just, you know, tell their children. Back in the day, people actually saw these creatures, and I'll explain why we don't see them so much now later on. But first, I just have to say this video is sponsored by an excellent website called thegiftKingdom.co.uk, and they take your head, you just send a photograph in, and they animate the head, put it on this body, and actually create a video. It's fantastic. This one's a princess video, so I'm just showing a clip of it here.
Oh no! The dragon is right in front of her. The horse sees the dragon and comes running to scoop up the girl. Faster and faster they run away from the dragon. But the dragon is also fast.
So I'm just going to run a tad on there. As you see, it's
years, even before you were born.
She meets all sorts of characters. She even meets a fairy, in fact, speaking of. She plays guitar.
The fairy can't stay around for very long and has told the girl that different fairies will all...
So I won't bore you, but it's absolutely fantastic. Brilliant present for your child or someone that you know. And it's called The Gift Kingdom. They do other things, pirate ones and whatever else. TheGiftKingdom.co.uk. Okay, so going back to these small creatures now. Here's another creature that was, I think it was Mexico. Yeah, Mexico. And the guy found it running in his barn and he threw acid over it. And then it became... like it is here. Now, again, people say it's debunked because he swore on his life that it was real, and then a long time later he had to admit that it was fake. But so this little creature was captured, this is the one I was just talking about in the last video, was captured by a trap that was set inside the guy's barn. And as you see there, its fingers got caught, and obviously it was screaming and shouting and everything else, and it couldn't get away. So the guy threw this acid over it, and of course it died. And then it got taken for experiments, etc. Now, a lot of the experiments came back and said, well, as you know, yeah, it's got some human DNA in it, but it's even got a towel, which was a bit weird. They couldn't understand what type of creature it was. Now, the guy eventually turned, the owner of it eventually turned around and said, yeah, no, I faked it. Now, I totally believe he was either pressured into it or was bribed into it, because he was absolutely adamant that this was a real thing. So I believe it was real. Is this a fairy? Now, this was captured by a guy that allegedly said it was a real fairy that he found at the end of sort of a mound of dirt somewhere. But the reason why it is fake is because the guy actually turned around the next day and said he deliberately done it, and he explained why he done it. He said he'd done this to see whether people still believe in fairies and pixies. So yeah, this one's a fake one. He was also a magician and an artist, so this gives credibility to it, whereas the last video I did where it was just a farmer, there's no benefit in him creating that little creature. Now there's also the old stories of this girl here, 16 years old, and she drew fairies and took pictures of them and sent them into papers, and the whole world believed they were real, but really they were just pictures that she drew. So yes, some things are fake, unfortunately. US Navy films these triangular ships, well, UFOs. Now, I'm showing this as the fact that it's done using night vision cameras. Now these objects, to the naked eye, you could not see them. So I'm still talking about portals and other dimensions. So this is the visible light range that we can see with our eyes. Obviously that UFO is using some sort of technology that we can't see within our visible range. Now red is the lowest we can see, and then it goes into infrared, which is here. Microwaves, these are all still light, even though you're thinking, you know, this ain't right, it's not light, how can that be light? It's all to do with light and frequencies. So the VAL that I was talking about in the other videos, the other side, the upside down, whatever you want to call it, is to do with light, and I'll explain that in the next video. To get to the upside down, the other side, the next VAL of our, I'm going to have to find a proper name to call this, but if you've watched the other videos you'll understand what I'm talking about. So to get there, it's not a portal, it's because a portal will take you from one place to another. It's just another universe or another dimension that's here, but we can't see it, we're out of phase to it. And the way to actually cross over is using light, as I mentioned in the last video, light frequencies that can actually open and close the dimension. Now let me just tell you a quick story, true story. A group of people were on an expedition to a tribe, I think New Guinea or somewhere like that, and they were going through a forest. The tribesman that was the interpreter said to the tourist type people, is anyone wearing anything yellow? Because if you are, you will go missing. You may have heard of the Philadelphia experiment. Well, this is actually a real thing that actually happened. I'm just going to explain the beginning process of it. So how it all started was these welders, arc welders, that was welding parts of ships together, not the actual Eldridge itself, but they were welding ships in a dockyard or in a shipyard, and the light on their welder machine was so bright that it actually caused the opening of the other dimension, the VAL, whatever you want to call it. So some of their tools, you know, spanners and hammers and whatever else, within that light radius would disappear. So after many times this happening, they worked out that it was to do with the light. So they contact, even though they were an army personnel, they actually contacted the army anyway. The army came in to do experiments, and they did many experiments and found this to be true, which is where it leads on to the USS Eldridge. I will come back to the USS Eldridge and the Philadelphia experiment when I get more into the time travel side of things, but hopefully you can sort of start understanding that light frequencies can open or can allow one to travel to the alternate dimension, whatever you want to call it, that's right here that we just can't physically get to. There are places around the world that has a natural ability to actually open these doorways, rifts, whatever you want to call them, into this other reality that's right here but we can't see it. One such place is Skinwalker Ranch. If you watch my other videos you'll see what I'm talking about. So this has the ability to open because of the properties surrounding it, the energy that's within the earth there, and the energy that's actually above because of the shape of the area. It allows these rifts or doors to open to allow creatures to come through. Interdimensional, that's what I'm now going to call the VAL, or the upside down that I was talking about in the other videos. Interdimensional. Now this is the video I hope you lot turn around and say, wow, Our True History has made it so clear and understandable, because if you've watched them all from part one, this is where it starts making a lot more sense. So the first nuclear explosion, which was tested in New Mexico, remember that word, New Mexico. Now you'll remember from the other videos that the amount of UFO activity around New Mexico, you've got the Roswell crash, you've got the bases, you've got so many other cases of UFOs flying around there, and that is because the nuclear explosion that was first tested there opened a rift, an interdimensional rift. So it's allowed creatures, beings from the other dimension to come through. Yes, the nuke also killed light beings or destroyed them, So to open an interdimensional doorway, you could, if you wanted to, use a nuclear explosion, as what's happened in the past, which has allowed these creatures, etc., to come through. Now, it's all to do with the frequencies. Now, if you look at what a nuclear explosion actually causes, it gives off X-rays, gamma rays, alpha, beta, basically a whole spectrum of light frequencies, and one of those, or a couple of those, I'm not quite sure, I'm not an expert on this, but they open up and allow the other dimensional to come through. Just to give you a bit of an example on that, so I don't know how you are on quantum physics. I'm not an expert, but I'm learning. So basically, watch this video here and then I'll explain a bit more.
Several polarized sunglasses, or some other form of polarizing filters, and start by holding two of them between you and some light source. If you rotate them to be 90 degrees off from each other, the light source is blacked out completely, or at least with perfect filters it would be, because all of the photons passing through that first one are polarized vertically, so they actually have a 0% chance of passing a filter oriented horizontally.
So what I'm using this as an example is to show that our current understanding of light, obviously it gets stopped because we can only see so much, but obviously if that light frequency from the explosion matches that one there, then it can come through. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I just have to throw this out there. I know I've mentioned this book a few times already. Absolutely fantastic book. The author has sent me a new book that he's literally just about finished, and by the time you watch this video, it should be on Amazon and Kindle. He sent me a not for resale version. He asked me to review it after I've read all of it, but I'm about halfway through it. It's absolutely fantastic. Just to give you an idea of what it's about, everything well, so far a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about he's wrote in here. It's a fiction book, but he's added everything that you can think, well, not everything, but so far he's added a lot of stuff that we've already covered. So very clever, and it's basically about a guy that right at the beginning, someone's falling from the sky. This guy that lives in a house hears a bang outside, goes outside, sees someone on the floor, and that person looks just like him, and then that person tells him to go on a journey with him. And obviously, is it a clone? I don't know yet. I'm only halfway through. Is it I don't know what it is, but so many factors that's we've already covered. It's fantastic. So look it up. Epic Journey, it's called. A skinwalker creature as described by the Navajo Indians. Now, apparently these skinwalkers can change shape. But the question is, where do they come from? Now, I'm suggesting they're interdimensional, and the reason for that is because they literally just disappear and appear without warning. There's no sort of UFO above them. So the skinwalker is described as a harmful type of witch. Now, get out of your head the sort of witch with a pointy nose. A witch could be anything. Who has the ability to turn and possess and disguise themselves. Now, other types of creatures that are interdimensional are trolls, pixies, squares, hydras, flower monsters, goblins, just to name a few. So these creatures are on the other side, which is why I was talking about small little people before. The Hadron Collider, which is by the group CERN, and basically it's a tube that goes round miles and miles and miles, I think in Switzerland, and you put, or they put microscopic atoms, and they fire it round this and hope that one goes one way and the other goes the other way and smashes into each other to create some sort of effect. Now, what kind of effect are they after? And where did they get the idea that they could actually do this? Well, if you look here, this is still on their website, CERN's own website. Extra dimensional gravitons and tiny black holes. Yes, they are trying to create or trying to bring through the extra dimension that we've been talking about. So if CERN know that it's possible, then it's possible that everything that I've been talking about is actually real. Okay, this is where I hope to debunk the debunkers. So look at this picture here. Now this is a long exposure photograph. So anyone that knows about photographs know that you have to stay there for a long time to see something happen. So let me just show you this video here. These are rods.
Thousands of bizarre images captured all over the world. Mysterious creatures that live between blinks of the eye.
What are they? That's the tough question.
Some think they are visitors from another dimension.
These things that appear to be phasing in.
Okay, so let's go back to the debunking part. So those rods are quite far away from the camera, as you can probably tell on the video, and the video is not done over a long exposure, it's done live. Now, if I know filming, so if a creature is close to the camera, then yes, it would produce some sort of streak where it's blurry because it's out of focus. But if it's at a distance, then it's going to be more in focus, unless it's going absolutely at the speed of light or it's interdimensional. Crystal skulls and interdimensional beings. Now, George Lucas was originally going to write the script for the Indiana Jones movie about crystal skulls with them being aliens, but Spielberg turned around and said, sorry, I've done too many alien movies. People's going to start wondering why. Well, we know why if you watch my other videos. So George Lucas rewrote the script and added them as interdimensional beings, the ones that come with the crystal skulls. So Spielberg agreed to make the movie on that basis. Now, the idea I kind of have is that they are alien in origin, meaning they were built by aliens, but I actually think that they're used to communicate with the interdimensional side of things, and I'll cover more in the next video. There's supposed to be 13 crystal skulls in total, and when they're all put together, some event will happen. But the main one, what I call the main one, is this one, which was found by an archaeologist at the turn of the century in a tomb in Mesoamerica. And when he passed, the crystal skull moved on to his daughter. And his daughter found that sometimes she could actually see through its eyes and actually almost see, you know, another dimension. And it was letting off different auras and stuff. So she found that this obviously had unique properties, and then obviously over time other people had found different skulls, slightly different shapes and stuff. I don't think these are the exact ones. I think these are just copies of them. So the Smithsonian, wait for it, I'll tell you in the next video what they say. You can probably guess. So this crystal skull that supposedly was either 1,000 or a couple of thousand, if not tens of thousands of years old, we don't know, that was found in a particular place, had some scratches on it. Now the guy that was digging it out probably nicked it a few times with his tools. Over the years it was been passed around, people's been handling all sorts of things, so yeah, it's probably got a few little scratches on it. So it's not perfect, it's not ultra smooth. I mean, my phone's got scratches, pretty much everything that I own has probably got scratches. So we have to forgive it that it's got scratches. But the Smithsonian Institute, yay, we love them, fake. They actually said, oh, there's some scratches on it, which is markings, the markings is scratches. So it was done by modern carving implements, because there were scratches. Ignore that word markings. It was scratches. So we know crystals have an innate ability to even heal people and have other properties that we can't actually quantify. Now, you've got to remember that a crystal has the ability to become a prism, which lets light through and then refracts it and changes it, etc. Just like a rainbow. Now, if you remember everything I was talking about before about the colours and the frequencies to open up the interdimensional side of things. So quartz is also another thing that's been found in the crystal skulls, and quartz, as you know from my previous videos, has huge amount of properties to it, and I believe that the quartz can actually open up under the right circumstances, open up the dimension to allow something to go through. Just to show you how powerful quartz is, people have now made hard drives which holds 300. So quartz in limestone has this fantastic ability to be levitated, as I mentioned before, but also I think can actually open in the right circumstances, can allow the dimensional door to open and close. Now, a guy called David Paulides has done a series called Missing 411, and it's about missing people, and the majority of the missing people go missing in national parks. And when I'm talking missing, I'm not just saying they was killed or whatever. I'll give you an example. Two runners chatting to each other, suddenly one stops chatting, the other one turns around, the person's completely gone. Sniffer dogs come in and they track the scent right up to the moment when that guy stopped talking. No more scent, disappeared. So the next series of videos that I'm going to be doing is talking about missing people and the connection between limestone and quartz and crystals. David Paulides was a police officer, and he's now an investigator into the missing people. If you've not already heard of him or seen anything to do with him, please check him out. It's quite scary, some of the things he talks about. I'll cover some of his missing cases in the next few videos, but please check him out. It will put hairs on the back of your neck stand up when you hear some of these cases. But his majority of his cases, he seems to think, are in national parks and are centered near these huge rocks, which happen to have limestone and quartz in them. So if you start adding that up with everything else and how they just disappear, and there's no Bigfoot smells, no Bigfoot sounds, no sounds of people being shot, killed, screams, or anything like that, no UFOs. So the only conclusion left is interdimensional, someone grabbing. So I'll just give you one example as why I think that missing people, the ones that David Paulides talks about, is to do with interdimensional. This is one of his stories. So a guy was leaving a voice message for his girlfriend or wife, and he was just chatting away. She obviously hadn't answered it. I think it was a landline that he rang. And he's talking to her, and then suddenly on the recording you hear him say, "Oh my God, what's that? Something's just opened up in front of me." He could hear noises. The phone could actually record the noises, weird, strange noises, and he just disappeared, never to be seen again. So, if you start adding the things together, it sounded like some sort of portal or some sort of dimension opening up and taking him, or creatures taking him up. So this video is sponsored by Fridge Door Alarm. If you ever left your fridge door open and lost food, go to eBay, buy a fridge door alarm, because it saves you. I'm just going to slightly go off on a tangent here. So pause in the interdimensional for a moment. I'm just going to say thank you so much for everyone that's followed me and are enjoying these videos, and the feedback is fantastic. It warms my heart to read that you're all enjoying them and you're not falling asleep to my voice too much. Now, when I first started doing these, I've always thought that school should teach things in a chronological order, because while I was at school they went from Tudor to Henry VIII to Battle of Hastings, and I had no comprehension where they were in relation to each other. And I've always, said that they should teach, from A to B, and then go back over it so people understand. So I think they should teach kids at school, early on dinosaurs and whatever else, and then move on up, but in a chronological order, so a kid can say, "Aha, Battle of Hastings was before the Tudor times," and I didn't even know what Tudor times was. They were bantering this word around at school, Tudor. I was like, okay, well, when's that? And that's why I was probably in special needs, because I needed to see it in a logical order, not just throw numbers at me and expect me to understand it. So when I started these videos here, I thought, right, I'm going to do it as it should be laid out, I think, as to help people understand it a little bit more. I was tempted to just go down the route of getting loads of followers and sticking up videos, just using other people's videos and putting them up. But I thought, no, I won't do that. I'll do something different and try it my way. And so far, it looks like everyone's enjoying it. So I'm just going to show you this video here. This is from a program. This is why I'm doing it my way. This is from Ancient Aliens. Now, they found, people have found a hidden cave underneath here, which is in one of the Aztec cities' pyramids on the continent. So I'm just going to play it, and basically they set this robot down and it finds gold. Sorry, I was just trying to get there. they find these gold or clay things with gold flecks on them.
Inside, they are clay.
So on the inside they're clay, apparently, and on the outside gold flecks. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you know I've even said about another pyramid that had mercury underneath it to extract the ore, or to extract the gold from the ore. And wait for it, this, when they, and the walls were adorned with the gold flecks, so you know it was the Anunnaki trying to look. This is a computer simulation, but you know the Anunnaki would dig in there. Now, watch what ancient aliens say it is. A ritual.
Suggest that someone was.
They say it's a ritual place, which is absolutely crazy. Please forgive me. I kind of just need to give a little bit more time out to the sponsors of some of the videos. You've probably seen me rush by their products, which is a shame because I feel really bad for it. So I'm just going to give a little bit more time. So, and you might find some of this interesting because I'll try and make it a little bit more enjoyable. So this book here, I'd actually already had a copy of it, and then the author saw my videos and said thank you for mentioning it. Now, if you look at the front here, quite clever design. So on the front there is a Sumerian cuneiform tablet writing going down, and on the back is Egyptian hieroglyphs. Now, did you know that there are over 2,000 different Egyptian hieroglyphs? There you go. So that's something you've learned. But this book is absolutely fantastic. Christ knows how long it took him to do all of this information. Look, I mean, even talks about how, it's just amazing. So if you haven't already seen this, that talks about blood groups and everything, please grab yourself a copy. It's available on Amazon, and you can get it on the Kindle, or you can get the paper book back version. And the same author has recently finished another book, so I have to mention that. It's actually really good. I've now finished it. It's called Epic Journey, and that I think they've changed the cover, or he's changed the cover since. But let me just tell you a quickly bit about it. So basically, the tagline there is, what would you do if someone fell into your life and looked just like you? Now, the story is a guy, and someone literally falls into his life that looks just like him, tells him to go on this journey. So I'll give you one little example. So our main hero is called Peter. Obviously, this guy comes into Peter's house. Peter runs to go get his phone and a gun from the kitchen, comes back, but the guy that looks just like him knows that his battery's dead and knows his gun is plastic, even though it looks like a real gun. How does he know all this? Absolutely fantastic. So it's a mystery, but it's also got a lot of elements that space stuff, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a lot of the stuff because it's the same writer that done the other book. So that's fantastic. Do get that, Epic Journey. So I have to talk about Fridge Door Alarm, because I did actually buy one of these prior to the person contacting me, and trust me, it saved me some times where the fridge door was left open. So it's a fantastic product, and it gives you an alarm. You choose the settings. I have it at 60 seconds, then it starts beeping. So that saves your food. And then Gift Kingdom, thegiftkingdom.co.uk, does all sorts of things, comic books, actual real comic books that you can actually send to someone, proper printed and everything. Comic books, all sorts of stuff. The Gift King. Okay, little sad story for you. A little boy in America, and it's always America, yes, because they speak my language. I can read their writing. I can hear them and understand. If it was Russia, I wouldn't understand. So I'm sure this goes on all over the world, but forgive me, it's always somewhere that I can understand their language. A little boy ran from the back of his house, front of his house in a rural part of America, round to the back. Never made it round the back, and search parties were called out for 5 weeks. They searched everywhere, and then one day the little boy was found on a place that they'd searched hundreds of times before. Unfortunately, the little boy had passed. So really strange how that happened, sniffer dogs and everything. But my biggest fear is, imagine a planet that has elite people that pretty much rule everything, and they choose who they want to die. Instead of maybe it's overpopulation, and instead of saying, hey, everyone stop, they choose. Why should they get to choose? That's my biggest fear. Oh, I hate silly people. I really hate silly people. Okay, so one person said that the crystal skull that was found in the tomb in around 1920 something, 1926, was planted there by the Smithsonian. First of all, they wouldn't bother doing that because that kind of then makes it feel like there should be more paranormal going on. So the Smithsonian, if you know who they are and who runs them, etc., you know that the last thing they want you to believe is paranormal stuff. So let's look at the facts, because people just defy belief. They really do. Okay, so there's no denying that 1926, this guy actually went into a tomb, unopened tomb, no denying that, and found and brought out a crystal skull. Now, the indigenous people that were all standing around that allowed him to go into this tomb, they all have heard of the story of the skull. So now, if the guy here, Mitchell Hedges, went there, pretended that he didn't have a skull, and took it down with him and then brought it back up to say, hey, look what I found, he would have had to have known about the Aztecs and the skull prior to going there. And bearing in mind, this was before the internet, so he would have had to have, the logistics of that, he would have had to have found the tribe prior to going there, found someone that could create such an intricate piece of artwork, such as the crystal skull, and then hope that no one else around the world replicates the crystal skull, because he would have been the only person doing it. But funny enough, there's 13 other ones. So you got to remember, this was before the internet. So local newspapers probably might have covered it, but that's probably as far as you're going to go. And now there's scratches on it, you know, as I mentioned in one of the other videos. And the Smithsonian says it's fake because, wait for it, it's got marks on it. Tool marks. No, they're not tool marks, they're scratches. They can't identify what tools did it, so therefore they're scratches. And they just says there's sort of marks. And they show them. I've seen videos of the, you know, going in microscopic, and there's just tiny little hairline sort of mark there. And clearly a scratch. I mean, the thing's probably thousands of years old, and they can't carbon date it either, because crystal you can't carbon date. So no one knows how old these things are. So please, enough with the it's been debunked. It hasn't been debunked. It's the Smithsonian saying it's been debunked because that's what they do. You got to have research before you can start saying things are debunked. So anyway, yeah, that's a genuine skull that has mysterious properties. Great Scott, Marty, let's talk about time travel. And I know so many of you are desperate to get to this particular part. So time travel, let's connect that with the spirits that I've talked about. So there's a guy called Randy Kramer. Now, he's not the only one, there's a few others. And apparently he's worked for the Earth Defense System. So this might actually go over a couple of videos, so bear with me. So he apparently, prior to being born, he had, you know, as a fetus, he was injected and manipulated and probably even put in his mum's womb by the military. And apparently, some of the DNA that they was mixing with his were alien DNA in order to make him a better soldier. So that when he grew up, they would sort of railroad him into the military. So that he ended up in the Earth Defense Force. Is time travel possible? Well, Randy Kramer, who worked apparently for the Earth Defense Force, says it is, and he was part of the Naval Space Command, which is a real thing actually. Apparently it's new, but we know it's not new. Now this is actually, I believe, the same setup that Gary McKinnon had found when he was hacking computers. He actually found the names of these craft, etc. And one of them is Highliner, which is that craft there. It's a mile-long spacecraft. So if you're adding everything together now, where, you know, all my videos, you start seeing there's a pattern here. So the Naval Space Command is in charge of that. Now, once they've finished with you on your tour of duty, now in this case, the guy, Randy Kramer, says he did about 17 years there on Mars. So on Mars, Randy Kramer says that there's 6 to 7 million people, including aliens, on there, all working away. Now, as I say, Randy Kramer's not the only person that said this. Now, when he's done with his tour, which he says was 17 years, he then was taken to a laboratory on Mars, and they took his spirit, his soul, from yeah, you guessed it, from the head, which is, if you've watched my other videos, connected to the pineal gland, and they take his soul, which or spirit, whatever you want to call it, same thing. He sort of says, you know, he doesn't really know what to call it, and then they transferred it into a cloned body of his, which was 17 years younger. So he's done the tour for 17 years, and then they suppress his memory while in this new cloned younger body, and they send him back in time. So after being transported in a younger cloned body, now bear that in mind, the word cloned, because they do have the technology to do this. This is not the only person to actually say that they can clone. In fact, one of the areas in Area 51, one of the basement sort of, you've got different levels, which I haven't covered yet, but because as soon as I start getting into what actually they do in Area 51, these videos are probably going to get pulled off. But one of those areas does deal with clones. He came back 15 minutes apparently after the time that he had left. So time travelled back 17 years, all but 15 minutes. And there was a timeline where people had, you know, he was missing, and obviously his family and everything else. But of course, once he goes back in time, they suppressed his memories, but he obviously can recall them, or possibly went to a hypnotist to recall them. The Philadelphia experiment with time travel. Now, of course, it's anyone that's in that industry, or you know, the elites, will claim it's a hoax, and they basically said it was a made-up story. But you can tell that to the people who died. Yes, people actually died on the ship, and you can tell that to their family members who no longer see them. You can also tell that to, wait for it, Einstein and Tesla were actually involved in this experiment. Now they didn't stay for very long. They did come along to the actual place where it was moored, and helped out with some of the electronic type things. So I'll cover what actually happened in the next video, but it's a fascinating story. And if you are interested in this story, look for a guy called Al Bielek. He talks about whether or not you believe him. He talks about being one of the people on. So the Philadelphia experiment was originally designed to phase the ship. Do you remember I was talking about interdimensional? To phase the ship so that the enemy wouldn't be able to see it. Unfortunately, the day that actually they did the first experiment, what happened was a lot of the sailors ended up being fused inside the actual hull of the ship. Some of them sort of halfway through the floor, like this guy here, his legs were dangling. Obviously they died. So it's quite horrific. Now I'm just going from memory. Now I think the actual ship travelled to another place in Florida actually for a couple of minutes, and then came back, and that's where Al Bielek's story comes into it. Now I think there was a bit of time travel as well. I think that it arrived a couple of minutes earlier in Florida than when it left. So I'll tell you the next bit. So Al Bielek's story while he was on the Philadelphia ship, or the Philadelphia experiment, the Eldridge, while they was going through a mist, fog, whatever you want to call it, opened up underneath the ship while people were being phased through. Now he jumped off, apparently, I think from memory, sorry, it's been a long time since I've researched this one, him and his brother jumped off the ship and into this sort of weird stuff that's underneath the ship. He ended up time traveling to the future, where he eventually had to find the military to be able to send him back. Now it's been a long time since I've heard his story. But he managed to get back to the time that he left, and then obviously as time went on, back to now, he then started to tell his story. So it's definitely worth looking up his. I think he's passed now, but he's done. There was radio interviews and all sorts of things. Very compelling. Woo! 300. We made it 300 videos. Thank you, everybody. I know I keep saying thank you, but without you, I would just be talking to myself. But let's go back to time travel. So let's start on the basics on how time travel is possible. So I'm trying to do this as basic as I can. So Einstein had come up with the equation that E equals mc squared, which you may have heard of, which basically means E equals the energy, mass, and c the speed of light. So that determines the mass of where you are. So in other words, the gravitation so for example, if you're on Earth, you'll have a certain mass, but if you was on another planet that's like 10 times the size, then that would have a different mass. Whereas if you're in space, it wouldn't have mass. Then you've got the energy that's inputted into it, and then the speed of light. So the best way to describe all of this for you is the ISS, which is the International Space Station, and Earth has an atomic clock. These are absolutely synchronized right down to milliseconds. So these don't go out. These will always be aligned with each other. However, astronauts on their longest trip round, I can't remember the name of the guy, but one of the astronauts that stayed on there with the atomic clock noticed that he had his atomic clock was 0.000 something slower than what the Earth's atomic clock should be. So in other words, because he's further away from Earth, he lived literally a slower life, even though it was only tiny fraction. But the further away he got or would get from Earth, the longer he would live. So this adds 100% credence to the Anunnaki coming here with their different planet size and the fact that they're away from the sun a lot longer than we are, and the speed that they go around adds that they could literally have lived on Earth for thousands and thousands of years, relative, that's the word, relative to what we would be on Earth. So time is relative. Now Stephen Hawking's done a book called A Brief History of Time, which I've read. There was a few errors that I noticed in there. You're probably going to say, how can I be smarter than Stephen Hawking's? Well, his are theories, and it's not my fault I've come up and found some discrepancies in his theories. But if you want to give that a good read, you can, but it doesn't still say how to actually create time travel. So let's move on to CERN, which is that Large Hadron Collider that we all know about, which I've mentioned earlier. Now these guys apparently are trying to create time travel. Now whistleblowers have said they've actually done it and even had dinosaurs come through.